Hello everyone, and welcome to this next video. This tutorial is going to go into how I have achieved this the skin on this guy here. It's I guess I'd call it sort of a bruised, rotted kind of look. That's kind of what I was going for with this skin. So really what I'm trying to achieve with this guy is really pushing the contrast in the skin, and working with a lot of purples and reds, a couple of colors that I don't use a lot of in my work. So I'm going to be looking at probably attacking probably the arms and his back. I'll go through the process of painting those areas. This is going to take a little bit of blending in this area here. I painted the gun and the arms, and the head was attached to that separately, and I've since glued that on and filled in a little bit of milliput in the gaps there. So starting out, we're using Vallejo Hull Red. It's a nice deep kind of brown red. That's this one on the palette here. So just mixing a sort of base coat consistency with that. And just applying that. When I'm doing this sort of high contrast work, I don't worry too much about getting a nice, bold base coat happening, because some of the black showing through in the deep areas isn't such a bad thing. And when I say the black showing through, I don't mean that I'd leave too many spots unpainted. It's just that I might not apply a second coat on those areas. So I'm talking about areas sort of under here that are well in shadow. I might sort of avoid layering up too much on those areas with a second or third coat. It just helps to sort of define those areas more as the shadow areas. So I'm just going to do that base coat, and I'll probably finish it off off cam. I might just cover the rest of the skin area on the whole model. There's obviously the head, some bits under here and the neck. So I might, just continue that off cam and come back. Okay, so that's the base coat done. Now we're moving on to doing the first highlights on that. So that's a mix of the Hull Red in one part, adding Rose Brown 2 parts. So 2 parts to 1 part of that as the initial highlight colour. So just mix that together now. It's pretty hot today, so the paint's drying on the wet palette, would you believe? Getting a bit of skin on it there. Just thin that a bit. So it might be a bit light, so I'm just going to add a little bit more of the Hull red. So the consistency that I'm going for with this is, it's definitely thinner than the base coat colour, but not too thin. So we want to get some coverage, but obviously we don't want it to be too thick. So the way that I approach this now is looking at how the light is falling on the surface, and initially just kind of being a bit rough, because we want, you know, the skin to have a bit of texture. We can be a little bit rough with the brush strokes. So basically the stage is kind of just sketching out where we want this sort of most prominent part of the highlights to sit. So as I'm looking at this model now, and you can even tell on camera that there's quite a bit of light reflecting off of, you know, this little nodule here, and then the light's kind of reflecting off of this area here, these muscles back here. So basically it's just a matter of kind of using that as a reference and starting to sort of really just kind of like sketching in where those main highlights are sitting. And like I said, you can be quite rough with it. Unfortunately, the paint's drying quite quick even on the brush, so I've got to work quite quick. So as you can see already, you know, it looks quite rough. Those highlights are standing out quite a lot. But what we are going to do is go in and glaze towards those highlights and just smooth everything off. This stage, you know, like I said, it's just a matter of kind of sketching out where the main areas of the highlight are going to sit, and then cleaning it up afterwards. So this area where it's coming together there, I'm going to sort of bring it right up to where the join was, just because it's going to take a little bit of blending magic to try and get that to look right. Obviously, because this is an area of shadow, I don't want too much of the highlight to sit in there, so I'm kind of having a look at where the light's reflecting off the most. And you can always go back and reintroduce the base coat color if things are looking a bit too light. I've always sort of thought of my painting approach to painting as being quite sort of fluid, not too sort of like, you know, following by the rules and things like that. So I'm always going back with, you know, the base coat color and cleaning things up and introducing other colors off the palette, and just kind of being quite flexible with it. So what I might do is, after showing you how I approach that here, I might just go and do the rest off camera, and then come back and you guys can see what I've done. Okay, so that's where I'm up to. I've kind of sketched everything out on that. It took me about 5 minutes to get to this point. So the next step, as I said, is to start working with a bit of glazing to smooth everything out. So this is the same mix there that I was using, the Hull Red and Rose Brown mix, and I've thinned it down a lot more than how it was. I'd say it's probably like a medium glazing kind of consistency. And now it's just a matter of going in and glazing to sort of smooth things out. And just remember, like, we're not trying to achieve, this most beautiful, clean blends. We don't really want it to be a smooth surface per se. As I said earlier, that it's nice to have a bit of texture, because at the end of the day, it's sort of rotting, bruised skin, so it's not going to be as smooth as, sort of human skin or elf skin or something like that. So this process does take a little while. It's just a matter of slowly building things up. It's just sort of the nature of glazing, I guess. It's quite a slow process. One good thing about the hot weather is it does speed up the drying process of the glazes, so that speeds things up a bit. As you can see, I've gone quite light at the top of his head here. Obviously because that's an area which is going to have a lot of light hitting it. So I've, established that already as quite a light area. Actually going to need to thin that a bit more because it's just going on a bit too thick and affecting the smoothness a bit. Normally with glazing, I would be wiping off a lot of the excess paint onto a bit of towel or something. But I think it's sort of, as I mentioned, we're not trying to achieve beautiful, smooth blends here. So in one sense, it also almost helps with that effect. If you were trying to achieve a nice smooth surface, you'd be, removing most of the paint and very slowly with very thin layers building it up. Whereas with this, being a little bit more haphazard with it. At this stage, I also find myself using a bit of, sort of a stippling technique as well to sort of help out with the blending. So there's that little technique that you can use as well. This just is a matter of, for those who've never heard of stippling, it's basically just creating tiny little dots or little marks that sort of, I guess they it kind of tricks the eye in seeing sort of two areas blending together, because there's sort of this dispersion of those tiny little dots. This paint is drying so quick. So you can already see, I've only sort of gone over each area a couple of times, but it's starting to blend things together, smoothing things out a bit, but it's still, retaining a bit of texture, because we're being quite quick about it. It's helping to build that texture, which we're trying to achieve. Okay, well, I might go and do a little bit more work on that. but I hope that you can see how it is that I'm going about achieving this. I'm going to just try and get everything to the point where I can move on to doing the next highlights. So I'll do that off cam and come back. Alright, so that's where I'm up to now after doing a bit of glazing and blending out the sort of sketch work that I did. Cleaning things up a little bit. Still looks a little bit rough, but now we're going to move on to doing the secondary highlight color. So I thought a good way to approach this would be to use a bit of that sort of stippling technique that I mentioned. So for the secondary highlight color, it's a bit of a mix of 4 different colors actually. So the previous mix that I've got there, which was the Hull Red and Rose Brown, I'm actually going to take some of that mix and add a touch of this one, Nocturna Fantasy Pro Series, Orchid Light. I always get Orchid and Orchid mixed up. How embarrassing. So that's this one on the palette here. And then also a bit of Ivory. I've been loving this colour lately. So that's this one on the palette here as well. So I haven't got an exact kind of way of measuring this out. But as I said, I'm going to take some of that previous mix and this is where we start, with the addition of the Orchid Light, we start seeing some purples introduced. So I guess it's kind of almost an equivalent amount of what's the sort of rose brown Hull Red mix that I've got there. And you can see that's just totally changed the colour that we've got. And then, and really just adding a touch of ivory to that. I can actually get some wet paint. I might actually leave, I would maybe just add a touch of water to that. The consistency is looking pretty good. I don't want it to be too light because, or too thin, because I want to do some of the stippling work, and stippling work really needs the paint to sort of be a bit more opaque. Otherwise it's the effect's just not really going to work that well. So, just going off of, you know, the light reflection references that we had from, you know, the natural light from the lamp, I'm just sort of building up on top of what we've already got on the model now. So, as I said, just to sort of, just kind of roughly, I mean, it's not even really stippling, to be honest. Stippling kind of, you're trying to get more of a round, you know, neater kind of shape with the dots that you're making. Whereas this, we're just making very kind of rough and random marks. This is also going to, at this stage with this mix, it's going to help us start to blend that gap a bit better. And so just like we did with the initial highlight mix, after I've done all this sort of sketching out, where the main areas of the highlights are going to sit, I'll take more of a glaze consistency and just lay that on top and start to smooth things out a bit. But at this stage, we're just kind of trying to sort of, define the next sort of value of highlight. I do really enjoy painting Nurgle models. I feel that my style of painting is, quite rough and often ends up being a bit messy. So I'm not one for following formulas too much. And keeping things neat and tidy. It's not to say that I can't paint in that way or I don't enjoy painting that way, but I just feel a bit more, sort of artistic freedom in painting a model like this. Areas like, doing the weathering and stuff like that, you can be kind of a bit messy and have a little bit of fun with it. It's just sort of what I've found I've enjoyed more in painting. All right. Well, I might go away and off cam sort of neaten things up a little bit and finish it off. But as you can see, as I was going to say, it's starting to define things a bit more with the secondary highlights. You know, defining the shapes and volumes a bit more, making the details pop out a bit. You can see that there is a massive difference between this area, which is somewhat completed, and you know, this area here. But obviously, with the shading, we're going to introduce a lot more purple, and that's going to start to bring those hues in a bit more. So yeah, I'll go off and finish off with that secondary highlight, and do the sort of glazing to blend it all together a bit, and then we'll probably move on to doing some shading. Okay, so that's the secondary highlights done. Decided to define things a little bit more. So now, as you can see, when you're comparing it to, you know, this area here, you're starting to lose a lot of contrast because of the highlighting. But now we'll approach the shading and just sort of get everything a little bit more defined and build up that contrast. It's going to help doing a bit of shading in here and helping to pick out some of those details, and then defining some of the muscles in the arms and things like that. So the mix for that is some of this whole red again. So equal parts whole red, and I'm introducing this purple here, which is also from the Nocturna series, and it's Imperial Purple. So equal parts of that and the whole red. And then, so there's about 3 parts each of whole red and Imperial Purple, and then I'm introducing 1 part black, which is just completely dried. So I'm using Vallejo black. Gotta watch this bottle. Alright, it's looking pretty good. So I'm diluting that to quite a thin consistency. So really, the way I'm going to approach this is just by glazing into the recesses, slowly building that up. Okay, go a bit thinner. Just letting it, letting that paint flow around these little bumps and boils and things, just to help to define them a bit more. It helps a lot with things like this, picking out the gaps in between the fingers. Okay, so this is, it's just a matter of just building up, slowly applying thin layers of the glaze to define things a bit. But it's starting to sort of to represent, similarities to what I've already achieved on these areas. The other thing that I will mention actually is that there is another highlight stage which will be done on the skin, which will just even emphasize the contrast even more. So again, I'm going to go off cam and finish off doing the shading for that, and come back and discuss the next step. Okay, so that's what it's looking like after working in that shadow color. It obviously, it started to bring out more of that purple hue, which is what we wanted. And that adds to the kind of, rotten, bruised sort of look that we're going for. The other thing that I've actually started to do as well is started to introduce another highlight color, and it's quite a light color. So, and that's from the original mix from the secondary highlights when I introduced the Orchid Light. But I've also introduced even more ivory into that, just to bring up the lightness of it a bit. And so what I'm going to do with that now is, again, like I did with the secondary highlights, approaching that with more of a kind of stippling technique, helping to just sort of like to slowly add in those sort of sharp highlights, but at the same time, like I mentioned, the stippling helps to add a bit of texture. As you can see, I'm being quite sort of erratic with the way I'm, using the tip of the brush. I'm not sort of placing down sort of, defined dots. I'm kind of just being a bit, very random with it. Pick out those fingers a bit more. And see, that's really starting to bring out the contrast now, which is what we want. Also using this to sort of pick out some of the details, little pimples and things. All those lovely little nurgly bits. Just went out of focus a bit there. Apologies for that. just stop that there and just go off and finish off doing that. But that's getting pretty close to how I want it to look. The only thing I might do as well, which I'll probably just do off cam, is going over and just doing some sort of specular highlights, little dots, just with the ivory, just to really intensify some of those areas that are really sort of, it's like on the forehead here, on that sort of reflex edge of the arm there, right on the elbows, just some really sharp highlights to really intensify those edges. So yeah. Okay, so as I said, I've introduced some straight ivory on some of those really sharp highlights, as you can see on the elbow and other parts of the arm there, a lot on the forehead, some of these little details on the back here. Yeah, you can tell on the head there I've used a lot of stippling and creating different sort of textures and marks. The only other thing I've done is just blacked out some of the details, the goggles and the mask and things, just to neaten things up a bit because it got a bit messy. So yeah, I'm going to leave that at that for now, for this little tutorial on how to paint, bruised Nurgle skin. From here, I'll also put together another little tutorial video and probably a PDF article on doing things like these little boils, how I've approached that. And then other little details like painting the maggots and other little things that are happening on his skin. So yeah, I hope that's helped. How to approach painting skin in a different sort of way to painting, normal human style skin. Yeah, I hope it's helped someone out there. Yeah, thanks. Happy painting.